Working designs. Does it live up to the hype?
Just put it in, Lucious.
Who the hell are you?
I'm you. From the future.
Wait, are we doing another Double Me episode? Come on.
Just put it in!
Gotta love that PS1 theme, yeah?
Mm-hmm. A working designs game.
Oh! It's so powerful!
Yes, it is.
Is that a werewolf?
Oh, you know it's a werewolf.
Are they showing me a hint of what's later to come in the game?
See, they give you hints in the intro.
Oh, is that boss fights I'm gonna find?
That's right.
Is that giving me an idea about what's in the game and what solutions and locations there are?
The dramatization of the whole game, baby.
Oh my god, this is gonna be amazing! Yes, we are talking about Alundra on the PlayStation 1, my first Working Designs game. I was not too familiar with the Working Design studio at all, and as many of you who have gotten into collecting later in life, you will eventually come across that infamous pink logo. And they also have these cool holographic covers. They were known for bringing Japanese RPG type games and Japanese games to the States that a lot of publishers turned down, it seems like. You know, GameSack actually just did an episode recently where they went through the entire catalog, which was great. Found some gems that I need, and of course they're super expensive, but still, didn't know much about the publisher, heard they're legendary. They tend to have a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek humor, the translations are a little loose, and you'll notice that in this game too. The guy who rescues you says, oh, I'll just be a lonely fat man again, and there's this, you know, a lot of off-color humor. There's a character named Bonaire, which didn't really register at first until later in the game. He says, wow, that girl is some real Bonaire material. Yeah, that level of humor, which, you know, I don't mind. It's not something I go through all the time. I think Alundra is a little bit more reserved than some of the other games. But anyways, let's talk about Alundra. Now, this was a game that I picked up before I knew what Working Designs was. I mainly picked it up because my friend Daria, she highly recommended this game. And as I'm a huge fan of Zelda clones, I had to pick it up. And so I knew going into it that it was a Zelda clone, but that was about it. And I kept myself in the dark once again, as I've been doing. I did not expect this game to be as long and as hard as it was. That's what she said. This game was exceptionally difficult. Probably the hardest Zelda clone I've ever played, the hardest Zelda style game I've ever played. And it's not just because it introduces a jump mechanic. So if you remember back when I did Beyond Oasis, that was one of my biggest gripes with the game, was the perspective. It was hard to judge your jumps, hard to know where you're going. Alundra has that in spades, but then it adds on top of that extremely intricate and sometimes obtuse dungeon and puzzle design, but also incredible dungeon and puzzle design. But the issue is that it teeters that line where sometimes a puzzle is so frustrating, but when you get it, it's so immensely satisfying that you immediately forget how horrible it was going through it. It's not one of those games where you'll fight something and the entire time, you know, it's kind of like, thank God it's over. It's more like, oh God, this was frustrating. Yes, I did it. And you kind of move past it, which is really a credit to the game. And it's why I can see why people highly regard it so much, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But like I said, it is very difficult, and some of the puzzles are a little unfair, because what the main drawback, what it does with the tough puzzles, is it introduces things where you're going to take unavoidable damage, or just it invariably will damage you a lot, to the point where you're running through your healing items, you're running through your herbs, your potions, your resurrection, one kind of like your fairy thing, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, they try to mitigate this by putting in every dungeon, at least the later ones, a save spot that will revitalize your health and revitalize your magic. But then you gotta backtrack all the way to it. And sometimes these dungeons are two-tiered, so in order to get out of a room in one area, you need to pick up a block, dodge some boulders, throw the block down, jump on the block, get into the next room where now you have the next task. Like, I think I didn't get footage of that particular one, but I did get footage of the one where at the end of the desert temple, you have to catch barrels, and the barrels are random, so you don't always know. And if it's not a barrel, it's a spiky ball, and the spiky balls hit you for a lot of damage. And so I don't know if it's pure luck. I don't know if there's a pattern. It seemed like there was a pattern, then there wasn't a pattern. But really, one of the things this game does the best is it eschews the Zelda tropes like no other. So you go into it, you expect it, oh, okay, I need to get the 7 crests. I'm going to go into the dungeons. I'm going to get item upgrades that'll help me solve the dungeon, and I'll get the crest at the end of it. Nuh-uh. Sometimes you might. But sometimes you'll get to the end of the dungeon and you'll just get a new spell, or you'll get a new upgrade, or you'll get a heart piece, which in these are these little red crests, which can extend your life out to a maximum of 50, I believe. But yeah, you won't always get the crest. Sometimes the crest will have been stolen already by the main enemies. Other times you're just doing a dungeon and there's nothing. Other times you'll get a crest and you weren't even expecting. So it changes up the formula as far as anticipating where it's going. And then this is even more so with the town. So the town of Inoa is being plagued by the main villain of the game, which this is kind of a vague... Now, there will be some spoilers here. But it's a vague Nightmare on Elm Street type story where you have this god figure that goes into people's dreams and can essentially make the nightmare infect them or kill them or cause them to do these things. And your character of Alundra, which Alundra is a dude. For some reason I thought Alundra was a girl. I always did. I mean, the name like Alundra, but yeah, Alundra is a dream walker. He starts the game, he's on a ship, he's going to this island to go fight Melzos, this god character. But when you're on the ship, it gets, you know, shipwrecked, and then you get rescued by the guy who calls himself the Fat Man, and the story goes on from there. But he's a dream walker, so you'll get this periodically where you'll also enter in the townsfolk's dreams, and you have to go in there and you have to rescue them. But even doing this, townsfolk die left and right, and that is a major surprise. There is a lot of death and destruction. The stakes in this game are super serious. That's where some of the dialogue, like the bone air guy, is a little bit of a juxtaposition of tones, but it doesn't go too far. Later in the game, you're introduced to Mia, which is a female dreamwalker, so her and Alundra kind of team up and go through things. You get a little bit more of the backstory, and it really evolves from it not just being a Freddy Krueger story, but almost like a Chalpa as well, because what happens is when the guy gets in there in the nightmares and makes him sick, the villagers will pray to their god. But in turn, the god was actually the villain, and he gets his power by them praying to him. And then when he prays to them, he gets more power to do more. Like, it's a perpetual cycle. It's a really ingenious story, very clever the way they've done it, and then very clever the way you have to get in there and you have to solve it. It's got a lot of religious overtones, very clearly not a game that ever would have come out in the Super Nintendo. One thing I will say though is the graphics are a little drab. The intro, the awesome intros you saw I referenced in the beginning is super cool, but they kind of blur the graphics on it. So immediately when I turn the game on, I'm like, okay, well the cartoons look fine, but the gameplay looks a little blurry. And then when you turn the game on, it's very grayscale. I mean, it looks like something that was made in 2010 as far as there's no vibrancy, there's no brightness, but no, that's just the way it is. So, doesn't hurt it that much, you get used to it, but it could have used a little bit more pigment, in my opinion, a little bit too monotone here and that, monochromatic, but the gameplay is incredible. It's not quite Terranigma levels of incredible, but it is very fluid. You get different weapons. You have a ice rod, a fire rod. You get a ball and chain and a sword, and then the bow and arrow. But the bow and arrow is useless, does almost no damage. As far as the spells go, really, you're just going to be using the water spell, in my opinion, because it allows you to heal yourself. You have magic crystals, which you get very late. Like, that's what I mean. None of this stuff is measured. So I found myself at almost the end of the game only at finding one magic crystal, and then I think I found 2 more right before the end. You can upgrade your spells, so first you have a scroll that becomes a book. There's items you can completely miss. There's these collectible Gilded Falcons, which I found 40 of, and I couldn't for the life of me tell you what they did. And then after I beat the game, I looked up what the hell do they do? And apparently you had to find a pass to get to the casino and the tavern, which is another area I couldn't figure out what it did, to then buy the items that are 10,000 Gilder from the dude who was the ship captain, which made sense, because the whole time I'm like, there's no way I'm going to buy these for 10,000 Gilder. That's just not possible. So I guess he uses the Falcons to buy it. So I have no idea what those items were, and I missed out on that life vessel. But the life vessels are strewn throughout the map. For the most part, the map is small enough because there's no way you can talk to the fortune teller who will give you an overhead view of the map. And I don't know, maybe the manual has a map in it, but there's no button to pull up the map. So I feel like that was a lost opportunity. If there was, I never figured out the combination. But the world is concise enough that you can kind of learn the lay of the land, especially after the repetition of where you can go, where you can do, getting the power glove, being able to lift up blocks, having the fire and being able to burn down the ivy, then allowing you to explore to the thoroughest, all what Zeldas are about, all the fun things that you really enjoy, finding those life vessels you couldn't find, finding those areas or those upgrades to the books that you didn't even know were there. The health system, like I said, you have a lot of reagents you can use to heal yourself. You have 9 herbs that heal, I think, 5 health each, and then you have the potions, the blue and the green one. You can only hold one at a time, and then you will find that you'll find chests that have them in it. So sometimes, unless you remember, oh, that had that in it, it can be a little annoying because you can't carry more than one. So the chest stays closed. So then you'll go in some of these mazes, like the last maze particularly, the one right before Melzos, is very, very difficult. And you'll find yourself moving back and forth, and you'll get into a room like, oh, no, I've done that already. But all in all, wonderful design. The main grief with the design really is the jumping, because you can't judge the perspective. Sometimes you go into a room and you think, oh yeah, I can jump that, and you can't. But you won't know. And so, especially if you're in areas where if you fall down, there's no way to get back up to where you were. But like, oh, there's a chest over there, I should go try that. And then you fall down, then you got to work all your way back through up to the top to then realize, oh, you can't make that jump, or oh, you need to go up and to the side, which is similar to the Beyond Oasis complaints I had, but nowhere near as bad, because the storyline on this game was gripping. It was a through line. Everything made sense. It made you want to continue to play it. And anytime anything was needed where you didn't know what the hell to do, you got hints. Working Designs did a great job on making sure that you were never lost in the game. Even when you didn't know what to do, the fortune teller will literally tell you what to do, and that's how you pull up the map, where it'll show a big glowing thing. And that was the one part where I was a little lost when I needed to get to the volcano. I had no idea how to get to the volcano, but lo and behold, jumping on the rocks would then make the geyser shoot it out, which the people at the town tell you. But unless you go there and then jump on it, then you're not necessarily going to know it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Unfortunately, Alundra 2, from what I've heard, is not good. And looking at it, I actually have Alundra 2 as well, because I bought Alundra 2 and I thought I got it for a steal, because I didn't realize that the one that was the good one was the first one. So I bought Alundra 2. The art style is completely different. Looks like garbage. But Alundra 1, phenomenal. And I think it's, unfortunately, for a complete copy, it's around 150 bucks. All of these Working Designs games have gone up, unfortunately. Desperately, this would be one that would be great for a re-release. Maybe if somehow they could amp the perspective so that it's easier to see where you can and can't go. But really enjoyed it. Really liked it all. The run button I felt was a little underutilized. You never really used it much. The combat itself, it's not that difficult. The bosses aren't that difficult. It's really the puzzles, the maze-like structure, being able to navigate these rooms. Essentially, if you thought the water temple in Ocarina of Time was too hard, maybe don't pick this game up, because that is kind of like a walk in the park. And it starts off fair, but it gets very, very difficult. Still, enjoyed the whole thing. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Alundra. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend picking it up or playing it however ways you can. I mean, the physical copy, if you just want the disc, I'm sure it's cheaper. It's another one of those things where it's in a double disc, but it's just one disc. You know, this is this one. And yeah, let me know if there's other Working Designs games I should check out. I picked up the Arc the Lad collection, which I'm excited to try out. And I've actually been thinking, because I had a great suggestion of a question in one of my videos where someone asked me about tactical strategy RPGs that I would recommend. So let me know if you guys would be interested in maybe doing a longer form, scripted, kind of not deep dive, but overview of, like, 4, 5, 6 different strategy RPGs, kind of going through what they would be, what I would recommend. Yeah, that's what you got for this week, guys. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.